Okay, welcome back to Module 6. This is Part 3. We're going to be talking about how to pay for school, all of the different ways. We're going to be talking about reducing your costs as much as possible. So yay! Okay, so first things first are a few statistics for you to understand before we get into the rest of them. 60% is the average amount that will be covered by a family of college costs. And $30,000 is the average amount of student loan debt upon graduation. All right, so this makes sense, right? Let's think about it for a second. If a degree is approximately $100,000, let's say you're doing in-state for 4 years, so the total cost is about $100,000, okay? If families are covering approximately 60%, that's about $60,000. That leaves $40,000 for the student to cover, for the student to have to pay. And let's say they get about $10,000 in scholarships. That leaves about $30,000. So there's your $30,000 in loans. So that makes sense, okay? So what this means is the average amount of college costs that families cover. So families, this would be maybe an educational savings account or investment account that they created to pay for college costs. They might be paying out of their own budget. You might get money gifts from extended family or something like that. That's going to cover about $60,000 or 60%. So keep that in mind. There are lots of kids out there that are like, oh, I have a college fund, so there you go. It's like, okay, that's great. For some people that may cover everything, but for most people across the United States, it does not cover everything. So you will still need to find a way to pay for some of it yourself. Okay, so that's what that means. All right, so how do you do that? How do you pay for the remaining amount? All right. So we're going to be talking about scholarships, grants, work-study co-ops, and loans today. Let's start with scholarships and grants. Okay, so scholarships are often based on some kind of merit. It may be academic, artistic, athletic, or it could just be applying. There are some scholarships out there that all you have to do is apply. Fill out an application, maybe write a short essay. That's all you would have to do for those. So, and there are plenty of scholarships out there. We're going to talk about that in a second. Grants are based on need, okay? Need is assessed when you file your FAFSA, your free application for federal student aid. So this is what the difference is. Not a lot of people know what the difference is between a scholarship and a grant, but a grant is based on need and scholarships are based on you doing something, not based on need, but you doing something academic, artistic, athletic, or just applying, okay? Now, scholarships. There's a lot of different ways to get a scholarship. So the requirements vary depending on the scholarship. Like I said, sometimes all you have to do is apply, maybe write an essay. You might need to audition or submit a portfolio or have a recruiter come see you play or something like that. So the requirements all vary. They come in a variety of amounts. So I've met people that think a scholarship is a full ride. They think that's what it means. So whenever they hear that someone gets a scholarship, they're assuming that person must be getting a full ride. That's not the case, right? There are full ride scholarships, yes, but those are pretty rare. Those are very, very rare. A scholarship may be $250, or it could be several $1,000s, okay? And another thing too is sometimes these are just one time, like a lump sum. Like you get $200 or $500, here you go, there you go, well, you're welcome, and sometimes they're reoccurring. So it could be $500 every semester or every year, right? So sometimes they're recurring, sometimes they're just one lump sum, okay? They also come from a variety of sources, including schools, private businesses, foundations, nonprofit organizations, okay? So, yeah, when you go to a school, you're going to apply for scholarships there. And that's typically where the reoccurring ones come from or where the full rides come from or something like that. And there are all kinds of scholarships that you can get from a school. some are a specific amount, and some might be like with my first college, I got an out-of-state waiver, meaning I paid in-state tuition even though I lived in a different state. Okay, so that one wasn't necessarily a specific amount, it's a waiver of that out-of-state costs. Some of them are competitive, some of them are not, right? Some of them might say, we're going to give this amount to 3 people that we choose out of however many apply. Some of them are just, like the out-of-state waiver, that was not limited. They could choose whoever they wanted to give that to. I mean, it was a talent scholarship. It was based on an audition that I did. So I still had to earn it, but it wasn't like I was competing against anybody else, right? So, and a lot of people don't realize that they come from other sources, so they just go for the ones at the school and leave it at that. But you can look around at private businesses, foundations, nonprofit organizations, talk to your counselor, talk to people in your community that you know, apply for as many as you can and keep applying. A lot of people think that you've got to get all the scholarship during your senior year, and then that is what you've earned to pay for your whole degree. That's not necessarily the case. You might get the most at that time because that's also when you're going to get like the reoccurring ones. But you can keep applying for scholarships at private businesses and foundations, and even some from your own university. You can keep applying, every year. Okay. Now for grants. Grants are based on need, as I said before. So what you're going to do is you're going to fill out your FAFSA and you're going to put in tax information for your parents. In some cases for yourself as well, but most of the time it's just your parents. And what they'll do is they'll calculate how much they expect your family to contribute. So the expected family contribution, okay? If they expect your family contribution to be very low, you will get more grant money, and it comes in the form of what's called a Pell Grant, P-E-L-L, okay? If they expect your family contribution to be very high, you will get little to no grant money, okay? So that's how that's calculated. Again, you are going to fill out your FAFSA every single year. A lot of people think it's just for the beginning of college. It's not. Circumstances change. Your taxes look different every single year, so you're going to fill out your FAFSA every single year to get grant money for the year, okay? All right, so that is scholarships and grants. Make it a part-time job, you guys, to look for and apply for scholarships. Just keep doing it. There are some that are even for like when you're older. You can't even apply for them when you're a senior, right? You have to be like a junior or senior or a non-traditional student or whatever it is, okay? All right, let's talk next about work study and co-ops. These are some that most people, well, not a lot of people, I won't say most, but not a lot of people are not aware that these are even an option. And they may or may not even apply to you, but they're still an option. Okay, so we have work study. Now, this is a need-based grant in exchange for working usually on campus. So what this means is, going back to your FAFSA, you'll fill out your FAFSA, you'll be awarded a Pell Grant. In addition, this doesn't come out of your Pell Grant, it's in addition, you may qualify for work study if there's enough need there. So what this means is that in addition to the Pell Grant, you can also get a job on campus, and your pay comes from a grant rather than from the school, but then the money goes towards paying for your tuition, right? So, oh, that reminded me of something else that I was going to say a minute ago. Okay, I'll circle back around to it. This is based on need, right? You would get paid at least minimum wage, sometimes more. You will get assigned to a job. It could be anything on campus. And how many hours you're allowed to work will be based on your needs. So like I said before, sometimes you are granted more or less depending on your needs. So in this case, it's how many hours you're allowed to work will be more or less based on your need, okay? So that's what work study is. Now with co-ops, not every school has co-op programs, but basically what it is a partnership between a school and a company for students to go work for them. So the main difference between a co-op and work study is that this would actually be in line with your degree. This would have something to do with what you're studying. But that also means that it's not available to everybody. If your school doesn't have a partnership with a company that has, work in your field, then it's not an option for you, right? But if they do, then it is an option. And so then people say, well, if I'm going to work for a company while I'm in school, isn't that an internship? No, most internships are usually like a one-time thing and you don't get paid for them. With a co-op, you do get paid. The company pays you. And often it's more than a one-time thing. So it could be like every summer that you're in school. And one of the great things about this about both of these compared to just going out and getting a job, if you just go out and get a job, then that is going to go on your FAFSA because it's showing up in your taxes. And it may reduce your need and reduce how much Pell Grant you get, right? Whereas a work study or co-op is not going to impact your FAFSA, okay? Now, I was saying that this reminded me of something. Oh gosh, it's flitted out of my brain now. Oh, I remember what it was. Let me back up for a second here. Okay. So what I want you guys to know about scholarships and grants, even like work study grant, is that this money will go directly to the school. It's not paid out to you, it's given to the school, and it pays for what, you owe. And then whatever left over, the school charges you. If you get more than what they need, then they cut you a check. Okay, so let's say your tuition and expenses for the semester is $1,000, but you get $2,000 that semester in scholarship. They only need $1,000 of it, so they're going to cut you a check for $1,000. Okay, so even if your family or your educational savings account is enough to cover, still get scholarships because that money will go to the school, and if the school gets enough money, then you are cut a check, right? Even if you have scholarships that pay for the majority of it, and you're like, okay, I'm good to go, you can stop there if you want to, but if you get more scholarships, they will cut you a check. So you always want to, like, even if you get plenty of grant money, still get as many scholarships as you can, because again, if the school gets more money from scholarships and grants and things like that than they need, they cut you a check, okay? So just keep that in mind. All right, let's move on now to loans. So the biggest difference between loans and everything else that we're talking about is this pays your tab for you and reduces how much money you have to pay out of your pocket. Loans do not do that. Loans are a way for you to cover the costs now, but you're still going to be paying for them later, and you will actually be paying more because of interest. Okay, so let's take a look at what this is. This is a hypothetical here. So what the chart you see here is based on a $29,000 loan, or maybe multiple loans that add up to $29,000 with an interest rate of 4.79%, okay? So what you'll often see is standard and graduated. So a standard 10-year payment plan for $29,000 will average out to be about $300 a month over 10 years. And so with interest, you're going to be paying $36,000. So you get $29,000, but you will be paying over $36,000 for that $29,000, okay? Now graduated. Here's the thing, a lot of people fresh out of college with their first job, $300 a month is a lot. So you can get graduated ones where you pay less at first. But every time you make more money, they will increase how much you owe in the month. And it can go up to, $500. Or it will take longer than 10 years, okay? And this will cost even more than the standard one in the long run, okay? And so even though this is a little bit easier to pay at the front, every time you make a raise, your loan costs more. So it's not going to feel like a raise until you're done paying this off, okay? And then as you can see, like even with this one, you're paying almost $10,000 more than what you got. Okay, so this actually like increases your cost. So you want to do everything that you can with these options here to not have to take out a loan. Okay. Here's the other thing that I want you to know about loans. Be careful. Read the fine print. Here's the thing. Student loans are not regulated like other loans. And I'm going to give you an example that will explain this to you. And this is one example. There were so many like red flags and so many oh no's from this one example. This came from a teacher that I used to work with. He found a student loan offer in his son's room. So the loan was offered directly to his son without going through the dad. And, you know, that would be fine, except there was something sketchy about that in that. The loan was offered to the son, but it had the dad's name on it as a cosigner. Now, here's what a cosigner is. If, you know, offering loans to someone who has no credit is really, really risky. And so what they'll do is they'll often require a cosigner, someone who does have credit, meaning if that person who doesn't have the credit doesn't pay, disappears and isn't paying on their loan, they can go after the cosigner for the money. Okay, so this dad's name was on it as a cosigner, but they offered it directly to the son and did not require the dad to sign it. So the son could have accepted it, signed it, and gotten it, and the dad never have known, even though he would have been on the hook for the money if his son bailed on it. So that's sketchy number one. That's red flag number one, right? The second one was this. So the loan was, I believe it was about $10,000 being paid back over 8 years. The interest rate was about 6%, which as you can see from this average here is actually kind of high for one. So that's not great. You definitely want to shop around. But what he found out when he read the small print on the back is that there was no cap to that interest rate. Now let me explain this to you. So sometimes you'll see in other loans or like with credit cards and things like that, if you miss a payment, if you're late just once or miss it just once, then they have the right to increase your interest up to 25%, right? And so sometimes that's the case. You're paying only 3%, but if you miss it, now you're paying 25%, which is a lot, you guys, it's a lot. So you'll see that sometimes, but other loans are regulated in that it gets capped out at a certain, usually 25% is the top, right? But student loans are not regulated. So this particular one that this dad was looking at, there was no cap on that interest rate at all. So if he missed a payment, it would have gone up to 25%, and then they retained the right to continue to raise that as much as they wanted, as often as they wanted. Can you imagine? I mean, just a 25% interest on that $29,000 loan would make it $50,000, but they were claiming that there is no cap, so they could have raised that even more. So this is why the whole student loan thing is such a crazy, crazy thing. You got to be careful. Read them. And here's the thing that I want you to remember. You know, with scholarships, with grants, you know, grants based on needs, scholarship, you know, it may be competitive. It may not be. You got to apply or audition or whatever. You got to do things to get it. You got to hope that you get it. Loans aren't that way, right? You can get a loan. There are lots of places offering loans. They will give you as much as you want because they make money off of it, right? So when you get an offer for a loan, you don't have to be like, oh my gosh, I better hurry up and take it. No, no, no. You can get loans. And there are plenty of places that are willing to offer you a loan. So if you see something sketchy, if you see a really high rate, if you see something with no cap, whatever it is, you can just say no to it because there will be another option for you if you are taking loans, okay? So be careful, read the fine print. If it's sketchy, if it's got red flags, don't do it, okay? And you can talk again with your counselors at school about, you know, which ones would be a better one to take. You can read it with your parents. Typically, there are government institutions that offer loans, and those typically will be the safer ones to take as opposed to a private institution. But again, just read all the fine print and make some good decisions here. Okay. Okay. So to sum up, grants You want to fill out your FAFSA every single year, okay? Scholarships, apply to everything you can and every year. Make it a part-time job for you to just constantly apply for scholarships, okay? And finally, communicate, talk with your family. This is something that not a lot of people do. They know that their parents are going to be paying for some of it, or they know that they have an educational fund, a college fund that's going to pay for some of it. But if you actually know what your numbers are, then you can have a goal with your scholarship money. If you know, okay, this is how much I need to cover, then you can have a goal with your scholarship money, and you can try more for that and reduce how much you would have to take in loans, or maybe not even have to take any in loans, because you know what your goal is, and so you can make it happen for yourself. Okay? So FAFSA every year, scholarships every year, and communicate with your family. Okay. All right. That's it for this part. Watch it again if you need to. Hopefully you were taking notes. If you want to talk about any of this in our one-on-one, please feel free to talk about it with me. And I've just got one more part, and then we'll be done. And that part is actually, we're going to be taking a look at your action pack because there's a lot in there. So I will see you in the next part.